give you a hug. He's going to inform me of it. Got your check in the car, 25. Okay. Okay. Enjoy your meeting. All right.
Being 7 o'clock, I'll call the Marathon County Board of Supervisors to order, please. And we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please remain standing. Following the Pledge of Allegiance will be a silent moment of reflection. I pledge allegiance
allegiance to the United States of America
to the republic
and
for
to
which
the
it stands,
America.
one nation,
And to the republic, so
indivisible, with
and
liberty and justice for all.
justice for all.
Thank you. We'll have the reading of the notice, please.
An educational meeting of the Marathon County Board of Supervisors will be held at the Marathon County Courthouse Assembly Room, 500 Forest Street, Wausau, at 7 p.m. on March 15th, and the agenda was duly signed and posted.
Thank you, and I would like to request everyone, please put your cell phones and any other electronic devices on silent or vibrate as to not interrupt the meeting, and I thank you for your request to accommodate that. We'll move on to roll call, please, and I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Arstead. Here. Beestrom. Bizotto. Boots. Book. Here. Butke. Here. Christensen. Here. Seiler. Here. Conway. Here. Drabeck. Here. Byfrick.
Here.
Fisher.
Here.
Gaber. Gibbs.
Here.
Gonering.
Here.
Guild.
Here.
Gums.
Here.
Harris.
Here.
Jacobson.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Krause.
Here.
Lamont.
Here.
Longenhan.
Here.
Leahy. Lowe.
Here.
Mask.
Here.
McEwen.
Here.
Oberbeck. Opal. Robinson.
Here.
Rosenberg. Seafelt.
Here.
Soybert.
Here.
Van Cray.
Here.
Vole.
Here.
Beestrom. Bizotto. Boots. Gaber. Oberbeck. Opal. Thank you.
Thank you, and I would like to welcome all of the visitors that we have here with us this evening. Have a full house, and also I'd like to welcome all the viewing audience that we have. So welcome, and we will move on to item 7 on the agenda, and that is public comment. We have 2 individuals who have signed up to address the board. We have first, and it is not to exceed 15 minutes, so each will have 7.5 minutes max. We have Steve Frodel from Wausau speaking on Americorps Week. Steve, please, if you will.
I don't know what to do with the flyer that I'd like to give to everyone.
Yeah, just hand it
Okay.
out and then they can pass it around.
You can pass around a flyer.
Yep.
Okay, thank you for having me. My name is Steve Frodel. I'm with NCCAP Americorps team, Greater Wausau area. I'm here to say Happy Americorps Week because March 13th to the 19th or thereabout, second week of March every year, it's Americorps Week. We do our best to tell everyone what we're doing with Americorps, and I can easily keep this to below 7.5 minutes. I'll just read something that I got off the website. Americorps Week is March 13th to the 19th. During Americorps Week, we recognize the commitment of the millions of Americans who have chosen to serve their country through Americorps and Americorps seniors, and encourage others to follow in their footsteps of service. Americorps engages 250,000 Americans each year in sustained, results-driven service through our Americorps and Americorps Seniors programs. These dedicated citizens help communities manage COVID-19 response, ensure students stay on track to graduate. That's what our program is about, so I'm going to repeat it. Ensuring students stay on track to graduate, combat hunger and homelessness, respond to natural disasters, fight the opioid epidemic, help seniors live independently, support veterans and military families, and much more. We've been in the Greater Wausau area community for, I think, 23 years, since the mid-late 90s. And I've been involved as program director for 12 years and another 7 years as host site supervisor for AmeriCorps members. So I kind of understand the program. If you ever want to talk to me about it, Google search AmeriCorps, that's like Peace Corps, or Marine Corps, C-O-R-P-S, and Wausau, and you'll find my name. And some of you up front kind of got the brochure and flyer. I love it because I see I call it longitudinal impact. I mean, we're impacting people every day, but we're also impacting over time. And I've seen the children that we serve turn into AmeriCorps members who turn into leaders, teachers, counselors in our community. And I'm really proud of that when I'm a baby boomer myself. So I'm looking at my life well spent, and it gives me hope for the future to know that service-oriented individuals are using AmeriCorps and my tax dollars to do good things in the world and in our community. Thank you for your continued support. If you've ever got questions now or later, please inquire. I think I'm pretty approachable. Happy Americorps Week. John, where's John? Ask me a question. Don't have one. All right. So, and there are other people here too who know AmeriCorps, so sorry to put you on the spot. And thanks for having me.
Thank you, Steve, absolutely. And we have with us Joel Walskog and information on the VARS database from MECWAM.
First of all, thank you for having me tonight. I was asked by some concerned citizens in Marathon County to come tonight to speak a little bit about COVID vaccine injuries. A little bit about myself. I'm not from Marathon County. I'm from Ozaukee County, which is just a little bit north of Milwaukee. I'm an orthopedic surgeon down there, and I did, what I thought was my part. And on December 30th of 2020, I got my first COVID vaccine. After the vaccine, I did just fine for about a week until I woke up and noticed my feet were numb. After a couple days passed, I could barely walk. I was falling around and stumbling, and I quickly kind of got a diagnosis that I had a spinal cord injury. It's called transverse myelitis. Moving forward, I tried to continue to work. I'm a joint replacement specialist down in Milwaukee. I was really unable to. It was quite an experience. I could tell you I was pretty abandoned. I know it's a very, if you had an adverse event and everyone wants the COVID vaccines to be great and everyone wants COVID to be gone, believe me, I'm one of them. And I want to clearly say that I'm not anti-vaccine. Sometimes people say that I'm anti-vaccine. I'm not. One evidence is I tried to get the COVID vaccine. But after kind of my career ended, I realized I still had to do something. And I got involved in an organization called React 19. And we started a national organization to really help. It's basically COVID vaccine injured people treating the COVID vaccine injured. In less than 3 months, we have 13,000 people in our organization. We're all around the country. In fact, we have connections all around the world. What I want you all to know is COVID vaccine injuries occur. I've been kind of helping along a physician assistant who's 30 years old has 2 young kids that lives right down in Stevens Point. He got his booster actually and couldn't walk. So I've been working with him, and he was going to come here tonight, but he couldn't make it because of childcare. Our organization, we are a grassroots, non-political, non-partisan organization, really set up as a nonprofit to help the vaccine injured. How do we do that, and what's our mission statement? Well, first of all, we're trying to help them financially. We've had some big events. I was out in DC. I spoke in front of 35,000 people from the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, which was an interesting experience. I've done some public speaking, but not that type. We've raised money. Why did we raise money? Well, we're basically giving the money right back to the COVID vaccine injured to help with uncovered medical expenses. And there are a lot. And the people that are injured really don't have a lot. If you have a COVID vaccine injury, you're not able to apply for the Vaccine Injury Compensation Fund. Why? The COVID vaccines are exempt from the Vaccine Injury Compensation Fund because of the emergency authorization. So we're really working financially to support those people. Next, we're developing our own physician networks and our own research networks. I can't even explain, I'm from healthcare, but trying to get someone to actually acknowledge the injury and help you it's amazing. So we're developing our own physician networks, our own research networks. Certainly there's tons of ongoing research in the country with regards to long hauler COVID, but there's really not a lot of ongoing research into the vaccine injuries. So we're doing it ourselves. Lastly, we're trying to create compassionate, supportive support groups. I mean, really, right now, I could just tell you, you can't even, if you say one thing that's against the narrative, you're banned. I mean, literally, we had a video that we had written by a vaccine injured, sung by a professional singer who is also vaccine injured. We showed it at the last DC event. We were out there in January. And within 6 hours, it was taken down. It was called Silence. It was about being censored. And literally within 6 hours, we were censored and the video was taken down. So why am I here? Well, first of all, some people from Marathon County wanted me to speak and just let you all know that the vaccine injuries are real. I've seen them, talked to tons of people, and just be open to it. And please just be compassionate to the people. I mean, again, we are kind of written off as, certainly as anti-vaxxers and anti-mandate. We try to stay as clean as we can with our messaging that we're just out to help people. We passed out some statistics. I mean, the COVID vaccine, I can certainly talk to you more of the science behind it. It's quite alarming when you see the real data. And as you see more of the data come out from VAERS, which is a vaccine adverse event reporting system, it's pretty alarming. There's over 1.2 million adverse events already reported. If you look at the flu vaccines in the last 25 years, there's only 197 adverse events in 25 years of the flu vaccines. So the adverse events with the COVID vaccines are real, and the people that get injured are real. We kind of say we're real, not rare. That's all I have. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. And we will move on to item 8 on the agenda, education presentation reports. Item 8A, overview of amendments of Chapter 17 zoning code. And we have the administrator from the zoning department, Lori Miskimmins. Lori, please.
It's on page 29. Okay, thanks. All right, thank you, Chair Gibbs. I just wanted to provide a quick overview of the text amendment changes that are before you. So in the department, every year, we do keep an ongoing list of different things with our Chapter 17 General Zoning Code that might need to be looked at in terms of improving consistency or making something more clear that we've had trouble interpreting when we're trying to enforce the zoning code. So we do, in the fall, bring that before the Environmental Resources Committee, and then we start outreach to the towns as well. We went out to the towns in November, December, and January. We had an open house as well for them to provide comment on the text amendment changes that we're proposing, and then we brought it back before the ERC for continued discussion and refinement, and ended with this list that we're proposing. And so I'm not going to go through every item in the list, but I'm here to take questions on anything that anyone wanted clarification on. So
I guess I would ask if the board has any questions on the items that are being considered as part of the text amendment and changes. Okay, maybe some questions will come up, Lori, when we get to the actual change. Thank you. Yeah, next we have with us the Parks Director, Jamie Polly, and we have a West Side Master Plan process update, and she will be introducing MSA Professional Services.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Gibbs. Yep, Jason Valeris should be on remotely with us, and we'll be going through a short PowerPoint to give an update. So just to refresh, the West Side Master Plan was part of the 2021 and carried over to 2022 CIP process, and it is being done in conjunction with my department, Facilities Capital Management, the City of Wausau Planning Department, Conservation, Zoning, and Planning, as well as the University of Wisconsin at Stevens Point. So that's kind of our core group that's been working. We did hire MSA Professional Services to help us update this plan. There was one done in 2017, so we're taking that as kind of the core and moving forward to really look at what we can do with Marathon Park, with the UW campus, and with the West Street, assuming that Parks and Highway are moving off of West Street. So that's what they're working on. And they'll give us an update on where we are today, what the next step is, and what the plan is for the process. So Jason, are you on the line?
I am.
Hey, thank
Can you
you.
hear me?
I will be controlling the PowerPoint in the chambers. So if you just let me know when we scroll to the next slide, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, terrific. Go ahead. So as Jamie noted, we were brought on board late last year and are starting the process. We're a few months into the process now of working on this plan. Just to highlights of our consultant team, I'm the project manager. I am a community planner by background, and we've got shown here myself, Rain Gardner, who's a lead engineer, Dan Williams, our lead landscape architect, and Mike Barr, who's our lead architect. Mike is with Plunkett Research Architects, was part of the prior master plan process a while back for the park and the surrounding area, and so is part of our team again this time. On to the next slide. I want to highlight what the project area is. It is inclusive of the park itself, plus the entirety of the UWSP Wausau campus, including the parking lot to the north side of Stewart there, and then those sites on the south side of the train tracks that are outlined in blue, which we're calling the redevelopment area. Go ahead. The purpose of the project is to plan for uses of land and structures in the study area to identify things that shouldn't change and things that should change. And with the kind of practical end result of this process being especially to identify and prioritize capital improvements that will be made over the next 10 to 15 years. So one of the things we'll be looking at along the way is looking for ways that the county can enhance net revenue in terms of how the park and these various sites are used. So benefit the community and also look for opportunities that the county can make the highest and best use of the lands and sites involved here. Go ahead. A few specific questions that we are addressing include what should happen with Marathon Hall? I know that's been a topic of community conversation, and we've started to look at it ourselves. What should we do with the County Highway Department and site and others along West Street? And then another one that we're highlighting here is that we're starting to look at the center of the park and discussing the prevalence of gravel there and asking if there are opportunities to bring what I'm referring to as a little more grace to the core part of the fairgrounds and also the ice facility there. Go ahead. Stakeholders include county departments, the university, the city, fair board, school district, park users, neighborhoods, the athletic organizations, including the ice users, historic preservation interests, the concessions, and campground users. And if you go to the next slide, our methods for connecting with people, the various county departments and the university and the city are all part of our steering committee. And so the steering committee is meeting periodically throughout the process. We've had a couple of meetings already. We've done some interviews kind of one-on-one with the steering committee, but then also proceeding this month to be doing some focus group discussions and interviews with some of those other key stakeholders. We will be doing a community survey with questions about especially the park, but the whole study area. We'll have a public meeting once we've got some preliminary ideas to share in a few months, and we are going to be checking in periodically with you and with other county committees so that you're aware of what we're working on and then can start to respond to the ideas that come forward in the process. Move along. Just highlights of the schedule. We are there in March, as I noted, doing stakeholder interviews this month. Community survey planned for April. We'll be seeing the Park Commission and scheduling a public meeting in May. It will be by that point that we start to have preliminary ideas to share with people. The goal of this project is to wrap up the design and bring it back to you for consideration for adoption in October. Few notes then, last few slides. We've done some work. We've done interviews, we've visited the sites, we've started to identify some things that we know, that we feel we know already, and can kind of rely on as we continue through this process. The park is the home of the fair. There are other features within the park that also aren't going anywhere. The stand of white pines, and then a bunch of structures in the park, the stone entrance features, the exhibition building, the judging pavilion, Eastgate Hall, the Little Red Schoolhouse, those aren't going to go anywhere. There are some small structures that don't serve much purpose or are rather underutilized, and there's a number of them, and so we may be looking at removing a few of those that are of lesser importance. And I talked about the gravel. Moving to the next area. With the university, the parking lot on the north side of Stewart isn't needed. And so that is an obvious redevelopment opportunity to be sold for other use, likely residential. There's a building there shown in this picture, the West Arts building, that is going to become something other than an arts building based on its condition and preferences of the university, either storage or possible demolition consideration. And regarding Marathon Hall, I'd say so far we haven't made any decisions, but we're not optimistic. We see few viable uses for it based on how it's configured, and to have a new use, it needs a heat source, a new roof, and all new windows. So there have been no decisions made yet, but I'm acknowledging our skepticism about its continued viability. Last slide then is to talk about the redevelopment area. We are relying on a prior decision making that the Parks and Highway departments are scheduled for departure and that those sites should be assumed for availability for new use. And so we're moving forward with that assumption, and we'll see what new uses seem to make sense based on a variety of input. The rail line and the rail yard are active, will remain active, and we need to plan around that. We don't see a bridge over that as a viable project, at least not a cost feasible project, though that has been talked about a bit. None of the existing buildings in this entire area are currently considered off limits for demolition and replacement. And I point out that we've got the Wausau Iron Works there in that photo that has some historic merit for consideration, but is not on the register. It is not a protected building, and to our understanding is in relatively rough condition. So we're not saying we're tearing everything down, but we are saying that based on what we've seen so far, there isn't anything in that area that is untouchable or absolutely must be maintained. So in terms of uses for that area, there's a few things that we're crossing off the list. We don't see it as right for retail or for lodging based on prior market evaluation or for heavy industry. But that still leaves a bunch of options, including residential, service businesses, office, light manufacturing, storage, or indoor sports are all things that are on the table for continued discussion. So that's the extent of the presentation, and I would be happy to respond to questions, and Jamie's there to help support any discussion that there is.
Okay, to open it up to the board for any questions from the board members. Any questions from the board members? Supervisor Langenhan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I think I'm going to ask kind of an obvious one here, but what next after this? Obviously, we have some really good information from the report here, and thank you for providing the summary, Director Polly, as well as Jason, I believe it was online. So thank you both. But what happens next? Who has the discussions? Where do those discussions take place?
Sure. So if you could go back to the schedule, Jamie, if you want to tackle that, go ahead. Otherwise, I'll jump in.
You can go ahead and talk about it.
Yep. So we are in the process of doing the stakeholder interviews, and we'll be having the community survey and the public meeting. And currently working on coming up with design ideas. So that's the stage of the process that we're at. We're not really putting anything in front of anyone yet for any decision making, certainly, or really even anything to really intended to generate public discussion. We're still in a fact-finding mode, but we'll be shifting over the next few months to beginning to show ideas for reaction come that public meeting in May, and then into committee, some more staff discussion and committee meetings into the summer and fall.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, other questions by board members? Go ahead, Supervisor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just want to clarify that part of this plan is contingent upon the ability to put parks and the highway department and other facilities under one roof elsewhere. Is kind of our long-term plan. So this is a long-term use plan because we obviously have to have some place for the highway department to go before that space could be repurposed one way or another. So this is a long-term plan we're looking at, correct?
Correct. Yes, we'll be looking at different parts of it that could be done, incrementally, but yes, it is a long-term plan.
Thank you.
Other questions for Jason and/or Jamie? Supervisor Gomes.
Explain a little bit about granite and lack of grease.
I can take that, Jason. I think one of the discussion topics has been, you know, Marathon Park is a beautiful park, and everybody talks about it as kind of the center or the gem of Wausau area and Marathon County. The white pines are beautiful, but there is, as he said, a lot of granite. In the whole middle of the park is a huge, giant granite parking lot, along with all of the granite that's around the ice arena. We know that that's the midway for the fair, but that is something that we're going to truly be looking at and working with the fair board on as to how we might be able to change some of that granite to a grass space or a more park-like feel. Maybe we change the layout a little bit to allow, I guess the idea is more of a Central Park type feel, where people come and they spend the day and they look at, you know, things to do within the park. Right now, people come to the park, they'll go to the playground, they'll come to Marathon Junction, they come for hockey, you know, and the fair, but they drive right through, and that is like a highway through there sometimes. Our deputies sit in there quite often because of the amount of traffic that drives right through the middle of the park. So looking at that gravel and seeing what we could do to make it more of a usable, friendly community park is part of the goal.
Other questions? Any other questions for Jamie or Jason? Okay, Jamie, Jason, thank you so very much, and we look forward to future discussions as the plan gets developed.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Jamie and Troy Torgerson have been good to work with, and appreciate your time tonight.
Okay, we will move on to item 8C, and that is education presentation and/or reports by standing committee chairpersons or designees. Any standing committee chairpersons or designees? Supervisor Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just like to give the board an update relative to the Board of Health's efforts to deal with the issues that have been raised by Supervisor Gumbs and Dickinson or Lamont in the past relative to the vaccine adverse effects reporting system. We have extended an invitation to the Department of Health Services from the state, as well as representatives from the Marshfield Clinic who are involved in some of the vaccine safety protocols, and we have a commitment from an individual from Marshfield Clinic to be at our April 12th meeting. We're still working on representatives from the state of Wisconsin, so we will be addressing that issue at the next Board of Health meeting.
Okay, any other reports by chairpersons or designees? Okay, we will move on to review and discussion on Tuesday meeting agenda items, and I will also make note that there is 2 items that we'll be taking action on tonight. So we'll start with item 9A1, ordinances, changes, and item number 9A1 is Town of Easton Rezone Ordinance 0-06-22. Any questions on that agenda item? Again, any questions on the Town of Easton Rezone Ordinance 0-6-22? Seeing none, we'll proceed to the next item, and that is item 9A2, Town of Spencer Rezone Ordinance 07-22. Any questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item 9A3, Town of Eau Plaine Rezone 0-8-22. Any discussion? Okay, we'll move on to item 9A4, ordinance amending General Code of Ordinances for Marathon County, Chapter 17, Zoning Code 0-9-22. Any questions on the zoning general code amendments? Supervisor Langenhan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Director Miskins did a great job highlighting the changes and everything, but I would just ask that if anybody does have any questions, it looks like our next meeting date, I believe, is 1 week from tonight. So if you have any questions, please email myself or the director, and we can get those answered in time for next week. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, we will move on. Thank you. To resolutions. Item 9B, resolutions from Infrastructure Committee. Item 9B1A, resolution to authorize broadband permit fee structure. Resolution 17-22. Any questions? Okay. We will move on to item 9B, 1B, resolution designating the week of April 11th through April 15th Work Zone Safety Awareness Week in Marathon County. Resolution 18-22. Any questions? Okay, we'll move on to resolutions from the Human Resources, Finance, and Property Committee. Item 9.2A is the approval of the 2022 budget transfers for Marathon County Department of Appropriations, Resolution 19-22. Any questions? This is a budget transfer and will require a 2/3 majority vote. Any questions on the budget transfers? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item, we are down to item 9.2B, authorize the county support for Public Service Commission PSC broadband grants, resolution 21-22, and that is an item that is going to be voted on this evening. Any discussion? Supervisor Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to just give some background, and I'll be, first of all, I'll move for adoption of the resolution.
Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Johnson.
What you have before you today is a resolution in anticipation of submittal of grant applications on Thursday to the Public Service Commission. And the Public Service Commission has $100 million available on a statewide basis for broadband expansion grants to unserved and underserved areas. The Broadband Task Force sent invitations or invites to all the internet service providers in the county, asking them to submit proposals to partner with us. We had 5 firms express an initial interest in that, including LTD, which is the RDOF recipient for Western Marathon County, Charter Communications, Frontier, Bug Tussle, and Serenity. We have the task force reviewed the initial applications and asked for additional clarification to try to reduce duplication in the service area. And if you look at our past efforts to submit grants to the Public Service Commission, 2 years ago we submitted applications, several applications. 1 was funded. Last year there were 5 that the county was, or 6 that the county was involved in, plus 3 from Frontier. Only 1 of those was funded. We requested $38 million. The Broadband Task Force was seeking to try to narrow the amount of overlap between those applications, because what we found is that when there are challenges to the service area of those providers, none of them get funded. And we wanted to try to reduce that, so we sat down with the internet service providers, and as a result of those and asking for clarification, LTD withdrew, as did Charter, because of some of the concerns over the overlap, and we tried to minimize. We didn't completely eliminate the amount of duplication, but we've minimized it to the Reed-Bevent area, and potentially there may be a couple of other areas, but we've significantly reduced the overlap, which we hope will have or result in additional success on the part of the applications. So what you have before you today is a resolution that would do 2 things. One is we looked at what the not the lowest cost unit provider was, but rather the second lowest per unit. Unit can be a home or a business. And we said that the county would participate at that unit rate based upon their applications that were received on February 28th. And the reason we did that is that there's been an ever-changing map in numbers. And we went from, for instance, a little over 4,200 units with Frontier. They're now up to 10,626. And what they're proposing to do in their application is to basically extend fiber to the premise service to their current service area in many parts of the rural area of the county. Serenity is looking at providing service to 368 homes in the Bevent, Reed, primarily Reed. They've also secured a grant. They're asking for $70,000. Frontier's request is $944,835, and they've not increased that with the expansion from 4,200 to 10,600. So Serenity is asking a grant for $70,000 from the county and received a commitment of $70,000 from the town of Reed. There are also some other towns that either have or are in the process of making commitments. I think Frankfurt and Harrison have made commitments, and then the final area is Bug Tussle, which we have partnered with last November in expanding both middle mile fiber and towers. They're looking at expanding in the Cronawater area, a little bit of Gunther, and serving about 605 new units. They would be extending service to some of the people along the middle mile where they're laying the fiber now as part of the grant that they, or the bonding that they did last year. So what I'd like to do is, in an effort to clarify the proposal, is offer an amendment to on page 2 of the resolution. My computer went to sleep. Add language clarifying exactly what we are looking at. And that language would read, the forgivable loan would not exceed $70,000 for Serenity, $142,175 for Bug Tussle Wireless, and $944,835 from Frontier, for a total not to exceed $1,157,010. The forgivable loans would only be payable upon a successful award from the PSC. So I would offer that as an amendment and then clarify that, if there could be a second.
Is there a second? We have Supervisor Fisher with a second. Any discussion on the amendment?
And then on the amendment, the resolution also calls for us to look at a long-term loan. The only party that is interested in a long-term loan for the balance would be Bug Tussle Wireless. We would have to negotiate the terms of that and bring that back to a future county board meeting. We are anticipating that these financial commitments would be paid out of the $114,000 plus that we have carried over from last year in the capital improvement plan. That would be sufficient to cover Serenity. And then we would look to an allocation from the American Rescue Plan Act, should they be successful. I would like to say all 3 projects will be funded, but I think the likelihood that we would have all 3 of them funded by the Public Service Commission is probably pretty low. But we need to be in a position to have the chair issue a letter tomorrow expressing the county's support. So therefore, we're bringing the resolution to you this evening. Again, any loans above this would have to come back to this county board for approval at a future date. But in a best case scenario, we would be providing service to in excess of 11,500 underserved units, whether they're homes or businesses, if we were successful, and I think it would be a worthwhile investment.
So before you right now, you have the amendment clarifying the exact dollars to each that is in support of each of the grant applications. Any discussion? Any discussion on the amendment? Okay, we'll proceed to vote then on the amendment authorizing 70,000 for Serenity, 142,000, what's the number? 175 for Bug Tussle, and 944,835 for Frontier. All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. And the amendment clearly passes and is unanimous. Now we're to the resolution. Again, this does require a 2/3 majority now that we have committed funds, potential to assist in these grant applications. Any further discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion as amended to support the grant applications signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries and is unanimous. Thank you. And we will move on then to item 9B, 2C, establish salaries for the sheriff, the clerk of courts, elected department heads' upcoming term of office, starting January of 2023 and run through 2026. Resolution 22-22. Just so everyone is aware, it is a requirement that we set their salaries for those elected positions prior to them taking out nomination papers, and that is what we are about to do. So what is your pleasure?
Yeah, you can't, there's no action.
Again, this is not set up for action tonight. This is, I apologize. So this is just for discussion? Any discussion on this agenda item? Okay, we will move on then, and we will vote on that next Tuesday. But the next item is up for vote tonight. Item 9B, 2D, a resolution to authorize Marathon County's commitment to pledge up to $195,000 of Marathon County contingency funds to leverage a small community air service development program grant, resolution R-23-22. We also have with us on the airport director, Brian Griffey, would give a little bit of a brief explanation as to what this amounts to.
Thank you, Chair Gibbs. In order to explain the resolution, I'll give first. So, many of you know, probably all of you know, United Airlines left Central Wisconsin Airport the first part of this year. Left us with a hole in air service, where the existing air carriers. Can you hear me now? Okay. Should I start over, or are we good? All right, fair enough. American Airlines left our market first part of this year. United, thank you. Wow, it's late. American's doing very well. United Airlines left the market January 4th of this year. That really left a hole in our air service. It's not a result of reduced demand. It's really a result of the workforce shortage. Typically, the other airlines would rise to meet that demand, both Delta and American Airlines, but for a lot of the same reasons, they have not been able to meet that demand. So it left us with really a good opportunity, and that's to go after a low-cost carrier. Just by ways of background on that, low-cost carriers really in our industry are the only thing that are growing right now. You look at the past 10 years, the legacy carriers of really United, Delta, and American have shrunk. the low-cost carriers and ultra-low-cost carriers have grown significantly. If you look through the news over the last few months, you see just about everyone taking large aircraft orders to expand their fleet and really meet a lot of the demand for this service. Low-cost carrier, ultra-low-cost carrier, by way of background, is just that. It's an airline that provides service to a destination for an extremely low price. Figure $100 each way to a destination, usually a nonstop destination, so it would be one of our top 5 destinations. And that's really what this application is. It is securing funds to get an airline in. That really is the way to get into the low-cost or ultra-low-cost game is you have to pay to play, to borrow that analogy. And that's to defer offset cost. This would be a revenue guarantee, but it really is to defer the offset cost, what it costs an airline to start up service. It can cost up to $10 million to initiate service at an airport, so that's really what they're looking to reduce. And with their low-cost fare structure, it takes a lot of seats to recoup that expense. The $195,000 being requested today as part of this resolution leverages other money. So this is a small community air service development grant as stated in the resolution. That's leveraging $900,000 of federal funds. And all the package would be, when you couple in some of the airport incentives, about $1.5 million. The other match is by Portage County. Portage County is also an owner in the Central Wisconsin Airport. The share percentage would be 65-35%. So Marathon County owns 65% of the airport, hence the larger number. Portage County, who did vote on it today as well and passed, would be $105,000. So why county funds versus airport funds? That's an obvious question, and believe me, Administrator Leonard really hit me with that when I brought it to him. It's prohibited to use airport funds. These are direct payments to airlines. The airport, how we're regulated, cannot make money, so we make money off of airlines. So essentially, if we used airport funds, we would be using Delta and American dollars to pay a low-cost carrier, which wouldn't sit very well with them. Also, because we accept grant funds, there's a clause called revenue diversion. Essentially, money made at the airport has to stay at the airport and used for airport purposes. Paying an airline is most certainly an off-airport expense. The application, in addition to the funds, would go after 3 specific destinations. This is based on what we typically fly. We did a survey with all of our catchment area to see where people would want to go, and looked at historic travel patterns. Not only what people are flying, but with data you can get from cell phones and whatnot, we can actually figure out where people are traveling from here, where they're traveling to, regardless of how they get there. If they fly out of Seaway, if they fly out of another airport, all your time is worth more than that. But even if they drive, all that data is collected. I won't go through the full list with you, but the 3 that are identified here would be Southwest Florida, so you're looking at Punta Gorda or Fort Myers. Orlando is our #1 requested destination, and Phoenix, Arizona. The reason we chose those, respectively, they were #1, 3, and 4 of our top 5 destinations. Vegas is in there as well. But the reason we requested those 3 is it aligns very well with Sun Country's, I'm just dropping all the wrong names today, with Sun Country's business model. Since United announced that they would be canceling service, I've been working diligently with everybody that owns an airplane to come up with something to backfill. And Sun Country has given a letter of support for this grant application. Now, I will say that's a long way from announcing service, but it does indicate that they are looking at our market. Plays well with what they've done in other markets. You look at Rochester, Minnesota, Duluth, Minnesota. Sun Country's a Minnesota-based carrier, but they are essentially our exact same size community. So very optimistic. I've got continued meetings with them later on this month, and looking forward to hopefully getting a low-cost carrier in here sooner rather than later. But sum it up, we can't really do it without these funds, so that's really what the request is. One more thing, I'm taking all the evening, but it's up to $195,000. If the money's not spent, the money isn't used, so it's a reimbursement. If Sun Country comes in and say, hey, we only need $500,000, that would be pared down respectively, and you know, the Marathon County amount would be significantly less. With that, any questions for me?
With that, I'd open it up to questions from the board. Again, the HR Finance Committee met on this particular item and unanimously approved a contingency pledge amount of up to the $195,000, and it was unanimous by the HR Finance Committee. Supervisor Robinson.
I would move for adoption of the resolution.
And seconded by Supervisor Rosenberg. Any discussion? Any further discussion? Was that a question from WebEx? Supervisor Book, go ahead.
I don't have a question. I just have a comment, and this is very exciting to me. We love traveling, and we've traveled pretty much solely from CWA. It's newly renovated, it's beautiful, it's accessible, it's provided terrific service, and the thoughts of having to go to Appleton or Minneapolis or Madison, etc. I mean, we've now had to explore that. So the idea of you bringing in another airline is fabulous for us. So whatever it takes, I am truly behind this.
I shudder at the mention of other airports.
I know. I shudder at trying to make reservations with them, but it's kind of come to that at this point. So unfortunately, although we do have a flight with you all in the fall, so.
Thank you for flying Seaway.
Any other discussion? Oh, Supervisor Fisher, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say that after we walk through this in finance, this is basically a win-win. If we don't spend it, we don't spend it. If we spend it, we may have a low-cost carrier. We have more seats at the Seaway. So that's either going to help attract or retain folks here. So it's a win-win, and I fully support.
Okay, any other discussion? Seeing none, we will proceed to vote. Again, this does require a 2/3 majority vote. All those in favor of the resolution to authorize Marathon County's commitment to pledge up to $195,000 of Marathon County contingency funds to leverage a small community air service development program grant, resolution 23-22, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, say no. And the motion carries and is unanimous. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Brian. And we'll move on to item 9B, 2E. The rest of the items on the agenda will not be acted on tonight, but are up for discussion. Initial resolution authorizing not to exceed $24,165,000 general obligation bonds or promissory notes for capital improvement plan projects. Resolution 24-22. Again, this is now the authorizing resolution that authorizes the ability to fund the projects that this board has approved as far as part of its capital improvement plan. Any discussion? Supervisor Robinson.
Just for clarification, so we understand, last year with the capital budget, we did things differently. We got rid of the capital improvement committee review because invariably what happened in the past is we'd get the recommendations in and then we wouldn't fund projects and we'd delay things and we'd have problems like the roof at the library and the structural problems at the jail. And we decided that we needed to involve and engage the facility planning staff a little bit more vigorously in the process, and felt that if most of the decisions were really financial in nature. So we're playing a little bit of catch up with some of our facilities. This bonding issue will be primarily focused on the North Central Healthcare campus. We're dealing with some HVAC, steam removal upgrades, accommodating social services, move from Thomas Street to the campus, modifying the old aquatic therapy pool into a conference center, dealing with parking lots, and then roof asbestos. There's also money that is set aside for HVAC issues in the jail, and flooring, and then some upgrades at a couple of our parks. So these are items that we approved in the capital budget for this year, and we're playing that catch up. We made some mistakes in the past, and we're hoping to avoid those going forward.
Any further questions by board? Again, this, just so everyone's clear, and to put everyone on notice, this does require a 3/4 majority vote of the board. And so anybody that is absent or vacant is a no. And so we do need 29 supervisors voting aye to authorize the bonding issue, the initial resolution. So if somebody is not going to be here, please, by all means, reach out to me and the clerk and let them know that they are going to be absent on next Tuesday, because we do need, again, a 3/4 majority vote. Vacancy and or absence is considered a no, and we do need 29 to approve the resolution. So with that, any other discussion on the resolution? Okay, we'll move on to item 9B, 2F, resolution declaring official intent to reimburse expenditures on the capital improvement plan projects from the proceeds of borrowing. Again, this is a resolution that has been consistent, that we've always utilized for bonding and bonding purposes. If a project has been started that was initially and started with funds that we have utilized out of our reserves, and now this will authorize us to reimburse those funds with borrowed funds when the borrowing actually happens. So any questions on that resolution? Okay, we'll move on to item 9B3, Human Resources, Finance and Property Committee, Environmental Resources Committee, and the Parks Commission. Item 9B3A, a resolution to restructure a .075 FTE motorized recreational coordinator to a 1.0 FTE recreational coordinator. Resolution 26-22. Again, we also have the Parks Director, Jamie Polly, here if there's any questions. Any questions on the reorg? Any questions? Okay, we will move on to item 9B4, Human Resources, Finance and Property Committee and Executive Committee. Item 9B4A, a resolution to authorize excuse me, the execution of a NCCS non-state grant agreement with North Central Community Services. The non-state grant use restriction agreement, both of which are a precondition to the distribution of the $5 million in state grant funds to be applied to Marathon County to the North Central Healthcare Reconstruction Project. Again, what this is accepting the $5 million grant that was awarded to help offset some of the increased costs in renovations for the inpatient hospital at North Central Healthcare. What this will do is, one, authorize Marathon County to accept those grant funds, but also understanding that the state will put in place a lien against the building for a 20-year period. The expectation is that if we have room in the inpatient hospital when completed, that we will offer those rooms to our neighboring counties that are not currently part of the tri-county agreement at North Central Healthcare. And the commitment to offering those is for 10 years, and it is unlikely that we would ever not provide these services at the tri-county at North Central Healthcare. So again, open it up for any questions, but I think that gives you a highlight of the request. Questions? Okay, we will move on from the item from the Executive Committee. Item 9B5A, adoption of the 2022 Administrator Work Plan. And I would ask the Administrator, the work plan is in the packet, and one of the things that the Executive Committee asked the Administrator to do, because it is very lengthy and there is multiple projects on there, and because at this point we clearly don't have a Deputy Administrator yet, capacity is one of those issues that we asked the Administrator to color code the projects, and I'd ask him to explain at least the color coding that we have on the plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and as Chair Gibbs referenced, this is in your packet, and I'll try to be brief, but the Administrator's Work Plan was previously presented to the Executive Committee, and it's been in the packet at a previous meeting of the full board. But one of the questions that the Executive Committee had was really trying to get some insight with respect to what projects, either that were already underway or proposed new projects, what the impact would be if those projects that were ongoing would be stopped, or the projects that were proposed would not be started. What specifically, what impact would be had on operations? So I attempted to do that, to designate that in pursuit of what was asked by the Executive Committee, using a simple color coding system. So you'll see if from my perspective, from administration, if there would be no impact or little impact on operations if a project were to be stopped, if it were already ongoing, or not started if it was a proposed new project, that received a green code in the project column. Excuse me, the progress column. If stopping an already existing program would have considerable operational impact, or not starting a proposed project would have considerable operational impact, it received that yellow color coding. And finally, if stopping an existing program would have significant operational impacts, or not starting a proposed project would have significant operational impacts, it would receive a red color coding in that progress bar. It was presented to the Executive Committee. In terms of discussion, I would indicate the one change that they requested that be made related to the Regional Forensic Science Center. From my perspective, that project, while very important certainly, and a lot of effort has gone into that over the last several years, chaired by Vice Chair McEwen. The task force has done a lot of work. But from an operational perspective, we could stop that and we'd essentially be continuing our operations as is. The direction from the Executive Committee was to move that up to a yellow color coding to indicate that it was such a high priority and that there was a lot of effort and willingness to have that come to a conclusion. But essentially, that's the document before you. My intent is to have a frequent presentation of the progress that's made on each of the programs and projects within the work plan to the Executive Committee, to try to make sure, again, the limited resources we have within administration and all of our departments are allocated in a way that the board desires. So with that, I'd certainly be happy to take any questions, and if you do have any questions at a future date, feel free to reach out to me and I'll try to give you the update relative to that work plan.
Any questions on the administrative work plan? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Administrator Leonard. Next, announcements and/or requests. We need signatures from HR Finance Committee and Exec Committee. Also, I would note that next Tuesday on the agenda will be a closed session. That is to review a summary of the administrator's evaluation. As you know, every other year, the full board is surveyed on the administrator's progress and work, and that survey was sent out, and I thank everyone. After we sent out the paper copy, we had a much better participation, and so we'll have a summary of those results, and they will be presented to you and solicit any feedback from the full board. And then we will come out of a closed session at some point and approve the summary and put it in the administrator's work folder. Any employment folder. Any other discussion? Any other announcements and/or requests? Administrator Leonard, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make the board aware, I announced this at the Extension, Education, Economic Development Committee. There's currently a vacancy on the Marathon County Public Library Board. If anyone on the board knows of anyone that may express interest or may have expressed interest or be interested, please direct them to the online application, a link that we've discussed in previous meetings. I intend to make an appointment for consideration by this board at your next meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, any other announcements and/or requests? Our next meeting will be next Tuesday at 7 o'clock here. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I will take the infamous motion by Supervisor Longenhad to adjourn and seconded by Supervisor Butke. Any discussion on the adjournment? Seeing none, all those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.